The Israel Defense Forces now saying the only airstrike carried out Tuesday night into Wednesday morning was the strike in Beirut that killed Hezbollah's second-in-command. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari saying, quote, "I want to emphasize there was no other aerial strike, not a missile, and not an Israeli drone in the entire Middle East that night, and I won't comment further." The statement comes as Israel has not claimed responsibility for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. The New York Times reporting the explosion in Tehran that killed Haniyeh was actually set off by a remote-controlled bomb smuggled about 2 months ago into Hamas leader's room there in the guest house where he was staying for the new Iranian president's inauguration. The IDF spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, did release a very brief statement in English, about 2 minutes in length. I do want to play that for you now.
Last Saturday, the Hezbollah terrorist organization in Lebanon fired this Iranian Falak 1 rocket directly at a soccer field in Majd al-Shams in northern Israel. 12 innocent children playing soccer on a Saturday evening were murdered as this rocket containing 53 kilograms of explosives hit the field. Hezbollah claimed they were not responsible for the attacks. This is a lie. The evidence is irrefutable. The rocket itself, as Hezbollah is the only organization in Lebanon with an Iranian Falak 1 rocket. On Tuesday evening, the IDF conducted a precise strike on Fuad Shukr, Hezbollah's most senior military commander and the terrorist responsible for the attack on Majd al-Shams. Let me remind you who Hezbollah really is. Hezbollah is officially recognized as a terrorist organization by over 20 countries around the world, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany. It is responsible for deadly terror attacks in Lebanon, Israel, and around the world. Hezbollah is a global terror organization that poses a global threat. Their ongoing aggression and attacks are dragging the region into a wider escalation. As we have said many times, while we prefer to resolve hostilities without a wider war, we remain fully prepared for any scenario. As we have recently proven, Israel knows how to deal with those threats and how to respond. Just today, threats were made by terrorists in the region. Throughout the war, we have proven our determination and resilience. We know how to defend ourselves. We have strong offensive capabilities, and we have strong defensive systems. And we have international partners who will increase their forces in the region and assist us in defense against those threats, both near and far.
All right, that was IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari, Rear Admiral there, and I do want to go over one of his comments, of course, that is making the rounds on social media, as he did say, quote, "I want to emphasize there was no other aerial strike, not a missile, and not an Israeli drone in the entire Middle East that night, and I won't comment further." To help break down all of the latest developments, I do want to bring in Paul Salem, the Vice President for International Engagement at the Middle East Institute, as well as the former President and CEO. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us here.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to ask you the overall question here of what do you make of Hagari's comments that the only strike that happened, airstrike, was over in Beirut that night?
Well, I think, as it turned out, indeed there was not a strike in Tehran, but rather it was a bomb that was planted in the residence where Ismail Haniyeh was a guest. Israel has not claimed responsibility for it. So that's, I think, that's what he's referring to, that there was no violation of Iranian airspace. Maybe it's a way to blunt any potential Iranian response, that they did not violate Iranian airspace, they did not attack from the air. But otherwise, the attack did happen, and Iran does accuse Israel of being responsible for that.
And as you mentioned, Israel has not claimed responsibility for the attack at all. You talked a little bit about the explosion that killed the leader. It's apparently was set off by a remote-controlled bomb that was smuggled about 2 months earlier into that room. So my question, that would require a lot of planning. That would mean that a lot went into this.
Well, certainly both in Tehran and in Beirut, it's quite obvious that the Iranian, the Islamic Republic, and their security system must be certainly very penetrated by foreign intelligence, maybe Israeli intelligence, maybe others. The same can be said in Beirut, to know where that commander was, at what point in time, which apartment he was in. So there's a sense both in Beirut and in Tehran that there's a lot of penetration of those security systems, and that Israel is indicating it can find and kill opponents whenever it chooses.
President Biden was asked just a few hours ago about the death of Hania, and he did say, he was asked about the ceasefire deal itself, and said that it definitely won't help a ceasefire deal. What are your thoughts on that? Could it potentially impact a ceasefire hostage release deal?
Well, definitely it will impact. First of all, I mean, it brings the negotiations to an abrupt halt for at least a number of months, probably. The Qatari mediators issued a statement saying, well, how can you be in the middle of negotiations, in fact, in the final stages of a negotiation, and have one side kill the head of the other side? That's certainly not going to help the process of negotiation. There's no doubt that Israel wanted to get Ismail Haniyeh. They've said that openly. But the timing does mean, and it means probably for many in Israel, that those who were hoping for a deal between Israel and Hamas that would see an early release of the hostages, that is not going to happen. And the war in Gaza is set to continue for a number of months.
I want to take you out to this live image we have showing the White House in D.C. As we know that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu actually spoke yesterday. A White House summary of the call states the two discussed efforts to support Israel against missiles, drones, all of that, including, quote, new defensive U.S. military deployments. Do we have any idea what that means, or is the White House purposely being vague?
Well, we do know that there's a number of naval units that are steaming into the Eastern Mediterranean, in addition to those that are already there. We know that during the Iranian missile and drone attack on Israel in April, the U.S. and U.S. forces themselves interdicted a lot of those missiles and drones, but they also coordinated interdiction and intelligence sharing with Arab allies in the region.
Dandruff is a medical problem. Trust medicated shampoo with a plus. Dermazole plus. Treat.
Which helped Israel and U.S. defend Israel from that attack. So maybe we don't know many of the technical details. Obviously, they want to keep that under wraps, but it's certainly the case that the U.S. Is putting units in place to help in defense in case there is a major escalation, keeping in mind that most American and Israeli analysts agree that if there is a major eruption from Hezbollah in South Lebanon, as well as other parties, Israeli and American defense systems would be hard-pressed to catch everything that's coming across the border.
The big question is going to be, how far will the U.S. go to protect its ally Israel if things do escalate? Do we have any idea?
Well, I think there is there isn't necessarily a clear ceiling to this. The U.S. is committed to Israel's defense, period. And Netanyahu's speech before the U.S. Congress just last week underlines that, and underlines that bipartisan support. Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that. But I don't think the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government are on the same page at all in terms of where Netanyahu is going. The U.S. wants Netanyahu to finalize a deal in Gaza to end that war and bring that to an end. Netanyahu is refusing to do that. By killing Haniyeh, he eliminates that possibility. The U.S. does not want escalation with Hezbollah and does not want escalation with Iran. Netanyahu went ahead and escalated both with Hezbollah and with Iran. And now, so now Israel is awaiting the response of Iran and Hezbollah and maybe other allies, and the U.S., whether it wants it or not, is locked into this conflict. And the more Israel is attacked, the more the U.S. will have to be militarily engaged.
Is there genuine concern right now within Israel of an all-out war with Iran and all of its proxies?
Obviously Israel is a very divided society. It was before October 7. It is today. We've seen demonstrations